Let's import 1 million rows to the database.
Yeah, baby, yeah!
Hello Laravel friends, today we will have some fun. I hope we have some fun with every video, but this is special. We are going to try to import a CSV file with 1 million rows to the database. There are many solutions to this task and it also depends on so many things like the database, data quality, validation and many more. So we try to keep it simple here, we're not going to use any package and I'll just show you different approaches that I found useful. And yeah, together we will see if we will find one that works for 1 million rows as well. Here we go. The way we are tackling this problem is through this customer's import command. Before we're going to start, we need to talk about some rules. So first, we're using MySQL here as the database. Of course, depending on the database that you're using, there are different approaches, but I don't want to go into all of them. So today we're just talking about MySQL. Then we have a memory limit of 256 megabytes, and we are not allowed to increase this. Of course, for some scenarios, this does make sense, but in our case, we want to keep it. We don't want to change this. And third, we are not allowed to use queues or jobs in this example. Of course, when talking about dealing with huge import, then jobs, batches are a good way to do this, but today we don't want to use them. So this means we try to make it work with the tools that we got before we split into different jobs and using the queue to solve this problem. All right, so I have this command called import customers. And I have here this method called handle import. Normally all methods are called handle in a console command, which are being triggered. But I've hidden here some stuff here to do some benchmarking, which you will see in a second. So that's why this method is called handle import and not just handle. And for now, we're just printing out hello. PHP artisan import customers. Here we go. So first we are going to select the specific as CSV file. So I have different ones for different amount of customers, and let's start with just the one with 100 customers. And then at the end, we are also going to see here some benchmarks. So how long did it took, how much memory was used, how many queries were being triggered, and how many rows inside our customers table were added. So this is what we're going to use here for our indication if something worked or not. Of course, benchmarking this kind of stuff is a topic on its own. I kept it very simple. I'm going to show you the code later, so if you want to check out what I've been using. But again, this is a very simple example here. All right, so how are we going to start? I want to start with the most basic and most straightforward approach that you maybe as a Laravel developer have. So we're using Laravel to work with collections. So let's try to see how we can make this work with a collection. So we're going to create a new one. And then we have a CSV file, which we get here the file path to the one with the amount of users, which we have selected through our prompt. So, and there are different approaches to load this file. And we are using the file method in PHP, which just loads the whole file into an array. And we can see this right away by dumping out what we got. So let's try this out. 100 users. You can see this is what we get from our CSV file. By the way, we can also take a look at this for now. This is the CSV file which we're dealing with. We have the columns here: ID, name, email, company, city, country, and birthday. So it's not too long, but still, I think 9 fields. So this is, I think, good for our examples today. And then we have some dummy data here, which I created for us. And we have different files for the different amount of customers we want to deal with. All right, back here. So what's the first thing that we want to do? First, the header is the first line here, and we want to skip this. So we're just going to skip one because we don't want to load the header. In our case, we are also working with a CSV file where we already know what the headers are, and also we're assuming that they are correct. Of course, if you have to check the headers as well, this is something that you have to do as well, but we're not going to deal with this here in this example. All right, now we're going to map over all those different rows. And we're using a helper here from PHP, which we can use when working with CSV files, which is called string get CSV. And now we are getting data line, which by the way, we also receive here. So what this has been doing, this is going to format the lines which we get from our file. There are a few things we need to consider. So where does a value start? Where does it end? What about different quotes being used? And this is something that this method does for us. So let's dump this out again to see what we get back here. I got this variable wrong. Yeah, let's try this again. Okay, and you can see we get now an array for each of the different lines of our CSV file. So this is already looking very nicely. All right. So what we're next doing? Next, we need to also map the data. Let's maybe call this now customer data because it's already a little bit formatted. And now we want to return an array. Let's see, what do we want to do here? Let me just copy this in here. Okay, so we have here the format that we need. We have our fields on the left, like customer ID, name, email, company, city, country, and birthday. And on the right, we have the different values from the array for each line which we get here. So this will now create a nice array for every line for us to import. So this means we can already here loop over this. And now let's just create a new customer with the data. All right, I think we're good to go. Our first approach, let's see if this is even working. All right, we're starting with 100 customers. Okay, and done. It looks like it did work. We see here 100 rows here in our table. We also did 100 queries. So for every customer, for every line in our CSV file, we did run a query. And it took 0.35 megabyte and it took 150 milliseconds. So not too bad. Timing is okay. Memory is okay. So let's see what happens now if we try this with 1K, so 1,000 customers. Okay, 1.5 seconds. Also not too bad. Already using 2 megabyte. And now we have 1,000 queries, which is, when you think about it, pretty crazy. But I mean, it works. There's nothing wrong here so far with this approach. But let's move on. What about 10K customers? 10,000 customers that we now try to import into MySQL database. Okay, 5 seconds almost 20 megabytes. You can see those numbers are increasing, but yeah, it's still working. So how far can we get this? What do you think? 100K, does this work? Let's give it a try. Bum, 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 bum. What do you think? In a few seconds, we should see if this is working or not. And it took a little bit longer now, I think around 30 seconds until we saw this message here. Yeah, we exceeded our memory limit. So this does not work anymore. When you think about it, running 100 queries with, I mean, I don't think the queries is really the issue, despite that this is very slow, but mapping all over this data is something that's very memory heavy. And I think what we should see now very easily, if we now try this with 1 million customers, it should fail right away. And it does, because this is already now failing when we try to load this whole file through the file method, which of course is not very memory efficient. Okay, our first basic approach is working until 10,000 customers. It's a little bit slow, but yeah, it's working. So I don't see any issues if you just have this amount of data for using this. But of course, we can do better. And the first logical evolution here would be to not insert like every query, every line of row. We're just collecting all the data and then inserting this. I think we all know that inserting a big amount of data is mostly faster than just making a query for each item. Okay, let's think about what we have to do here. So let's get rid of this each here. Everything else will still be the same here. We are just creating our data. So, and now here we're using our customer, and we're going to insert now the collected data, customer data, and we get all of the values, which gives us back an array. Okay, let's try this out. We're going to start with 100 customers. Okay, working. You can already see this is way faster than before, 30 milliseconds just for the first one. Let's try now 1K, 45 seconds, also pretty fast. Also, memory is not an issue at all currently. Still, we're only doing one query to insert this 1,000 entries. Okay, let's move on. 10K. Oh, you can see we have a different issue here. This one is now about our prepared statements, too many placeholders. So what we're doing here is we try to insert all this data. Laravel in the back is using PDO and creates all those prepared statements with all the placeholders for all the different fields. And yeah, now this becomes too big because there's a limit. I'm not sure how big this limit is, but something in the 10,000s, probably a little bit more. But yeah, then you can change this limit, but we also don't want to do this. But yeah, this is now where this approach is ending. So inserting all of the data works, but yeah, at some point there is also too many entries and this will not work anymore with MySQL. Okay, so what's the logical progression here for this? When you think about it, first we tried to make a query for every item. Now we'll try a query for all the data. So yeah, the logical next step would be chunking. So this means we are still keeping everything as it was, mostly everything. And now we are just using the chunk method on collections, the collections class, and we'll try it out with 1000. And then now for each of the chunk, we have to insert this data. So let's bring this up here. And this will be now our chunk data. And here we have to get all of them, right? This is a collection. Yeah, the chunk should be in a collection. Okay, everything looks similar. We are just chunking the whole data into 1000 items arrays or collections here, and then we're just importing or inserting 1000 at a time to the database. All right, let's try this out. 100 customers, 20 milliseconds. Again, super fast. Okay, 1000, 64 milliseconds. Pretty fast. Also memory looking good here. 10,000 users, 270 milliseconds. Also really fast now. And you can see we're just doing 10 queries here instead of 10,000 like we had before. Okay, what about 100K? What do you think? Is this working? Yes, it is. 1.8 seconds to import 100,000 customers from our CSV file. So you can see this is actually, yeah, pretty good. Memory is increasing here. We're already at almost 50 megabyte, but I think it's not too bad. 100 queries here for 100,000 rows. Okay, but can we import 1 million users with this approach? What do you think? Let's try it out. Nope. So again, we are hitting here this memory issue because we have exceeded our 256 megabyte limit here. And yeah, probably the issue is this line here already, or to be specific, this here where we try to collect the whole file into an array, which yeah, will probably throw the error because this takes too much space, too much memory, especially with this 1 million customer CSV file. Okay, what else can we do? I think we need to think about a new approach here. So let's get rid of this and let's think about what we can do as. So we were using collections now, but collections is a little bit slow for this. So what about using lazy collections? So in Laravel, we have lazy collections, which are using generators, PHP generators in the background. So this means we can load specific data, but read them one at a time, which pretty much sounds like exactly what we need, right? We don't want to load the whole CSV file into our collection. We want to use this one by one. But yeah, the issue is lazy collections isn't really the tool for doing this. We can for sure create here lazy collection inside the make method, use a closure and then load all the data inside here, but we would still need to use file streaming from PHP in order to do this. So something else that I want to show you is where lazy collections really shine is if we, for example, load some data from the database. So if we have 1 million rows in our database, 1 million customers, and we want to loop over all of them, if you try to get all of them just with all and create a collection like this, this will for sure fail as well. So this means lazy here is a good use case for these examples because now we can stream kind of the data from the database, check one customer at a time without loading everything into memory. So this is where lazy collections really shine. But in our case, we need something different. We need to load we need to stream the data from a specific file in order to import this. And there's something better which we can use in PHP. And this is also a bit funny because sometimes, yeah, the most simple and most basic approach are the best one. So let's create here a new data array. Then we're going to open a file and we call this handle, and we're going to fopen our file from the file path, and we want to say we only want to read this file here. All right, so this is opening this file here, but it's not loading the whole content yet. So what we now can do is we can use the fgetCSV method here on our handle of our open file. And what this does, this will now skip the header. So this will give me back the header, but since we're not storing it, we're just skipping it. So this is the same as just skipping the first item from the collection, which we did before. And now we want to loop over all the remaining files, or remaining lines of our file. So we have this while loop here, and we are getting each row again with the fgetCSV file. By the way, in the back, this is also very similar to what we had before with the getCSRV method here, which also formats the data already for us. And we want to make sure that this is not false. So when it's false, we have reached the end of the file. This is what this does here. Okay, and now we're adding to our data array, again, each item of our CSV file, similar to before, with all the different fields which we have, and now we're creating this whole data array with all the different data. But of course, we already learned that chunking is a good thing. So what we're doing here, we're checking here if we are reaching a specific count. So if our data equals 1000, and let's rename this, I'm sure you're already complaining about this variable name. It's our customer data chunk. And inside here, what we want to do is we now want to insert our new customers, insert customer data chunk. And we also need to make sure that we're now going to reset this array, this current chunk, to an empty array so that the new chunk can be filled up afterwards. All right, I think this looks good. And then after the loop, oh, by the way, what is this? Oh, it looks like we haven't defined now. So let's do this here as well. All right, again, we're defining it just one time here at the top and then using it whenever we need it here so that we don't have to do this all the time. And yeah, I was checking where the while loop ends because yeah, after this, we'll need to take care of the remaining customers. So if customer data chunk is not empty, what we want to do is again, insert into our customers with the remaining data chunk, which we have here. And then the only thing left here is to close our pointer to the file like this. And then we're good to go. Let's give this a try. PHP artisan import customers. And let's start with 100 customers. 100 customers. Okay, pretty fast again, 30 milliseconds. Let's see about 1K, 71 milliseconds. Pretty fast here again, 10K, 288 milliseconds. Really good. What about 100K? 1.9 seconds, also pretty good. You can see memory is already increasing here, but so far it's working really well. So what about 1 million customers? What do you think? Can we make this work now? Finally, our first approach, making this work. No, it's not working. Here we see already that it is hard to please everyone. Chunking on the one hand is really great because it makes inserting data really fast. But on the other hand, preparing this kind of data takes a lot of memory, and that's why we see these approaches fail for 1 million customers. So why could this be failing? We are already streaming the data, which we do here. So this means this is one of the best ways we can do this in order to load this file. So this means this shouldn't be the issue. But still, we have here our chunks, and our chunks are quite big. And that's probably why we see this memory issue here, because we have to deal with, those chunks every time, and this needs some memory. And with 1 million users, this at some point gets too big. Okay, so what do we do here? Now, the chunks is an issue with memory, but we need the chunks in order to not do too many database queries, because this is also slow and not working as efficient as it should be. So what can we do here? So there's another approach. Let me show you. So we try now to directly work with PDO. So let's get our PDO object. We're using the database facade here to get our connection, and then get PDO. All right, now we create our statement by creating our prepare statement here. Okay, so this will be a string now. And let me just copy this in here. So now we are writing our statement ourselves. We want to insert into the customers table with all those different fields here. And we're creating all these placeholders. I think we still need to close this here like this. Okay, so again, we are streaming our file here to get every line here with our fget CSV method again until this is false. And now inside here, for every line which we have, we directly execute this query. And let's also bring in the data here, which I have already prepared. So yeah, we just need to prepare the data now because everything we have already prepared here. All right, let's take a look. At the end, we need to provide our time, and then we still need to close our handle. Okay. I think this should do the trick. Let's give this a try and let's see if we see any difference. 100 customers, 51 milliseconds. Fast, but I think we've seen similar approaches before. Similar results, 1K, 240 milliseconds. So I think it's a little bit slower than the best approaches which we already had, but let's see how far we can take this. So 10K, 3 seconds. Again, we're doing here 10K queries, which is a lot, but yeah, bear with me. So let me show you where this can lead us. 100K. This took now 25 seconds. Again, which you will also see memory here is, yeah, absolutely no issue at all because we don't do anything memory heavy. But yeah, time, it takes a bit, but what about 1 million customers? Let's try this. Something else you should try is giving this video a like if you like it and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss our next videos. And we do have a result. Finally, we were able to import 1 million customers into our MySQL database, and it took us 3 minutes, which isn't too bad. Almost 0 megabytes in memory, and we did 1 million queries to our database, which is just crazy when you think about it. But yeah, it did work, and it was the first approach where we could make this happen. Okay, that's pretty cool. So what did we learn here from this example? Again, file reading is the way to go in order to open this file and read from this file. But now we use this prepare statement here, which we just created once, and then we really did 1 million queries. And it did work, which is pretty cool, I would say. But yet there is a little bit more which we can do here. Okay, so we made importing 1 million rows work, which is already amazing because this is a lot of data and it's not so easy. But yeah, memory wasn't an issue at all. This looked really well. But on the other hand, 3-4 minutes isn't that fast, and I believe that we can do better here. And whenever memory is already working well, but timing not, then you might go a little bit back to chunking again, which we haven't tried with this current approach. So this is what we're going to try now. Introduce chunking into this approach where we use our prepared statement up front. All right, so let's go back up here. So how do we start here? First, we need a chunk size, which is 500. And then we need our chunks, which is for now an empty array. And now our prepared statement will be different because now we're not dealing with just one record at a time. We want to import a chunk of records. So this means those values here will be different because we have multiple ones for multiple records. And this is a little bit tricky to set up. That's why I have already prepared here a method to do this, which is called prepare chunk statement, just providing our chunk size. We need in order to make this work a lot of different placeholders, which are now not only items, but there is now one big array with all the different fields here for different items in the same array. It's a little bit messy to set up, but it's no rocket science, but it makes this a little bit cleaner. So we're preparing the statement here for multiple records. This is what this does. Okay, what next? So let's get rid of this statement here. And now we're creating a new chunk with array merge, which we want to merge our chunks array with a new array of the current values. Let's bring this in here, and we also have our dates here at the end. And then it's very similar to before, we need to check the count. So if the count of our chunks equals our chunk size, but we need to multiply this now by 9, which is the count of our fields for our CSV. So this means currently, or before, we had all items separately in our chunks, but now all the values for our lines of our rows are now all together in one array. And this means we will have 9 times the value as before in order to get our chunk size. And then if this is true, we're going to execute our statements with the current chunks. And again, we're going to set the chunks to an empty array afterwards. And then after our while loop, we also again have to check for remaining entries in our chunks array. So if chunks is not empty, then we need to check how many remaining rows we have. And this is what we're going to do. Remaining rows equals the count of our chunks. Yes, and now we need to divide this by 9. So this is the number of items we still have. And this is important because we need to create a new statement here. Again, with our helper here, prepare chunk statement for our remaining rows. Because before we did this, we prepared this for our chunks of 500, I think it was. But now we have to prepare this for the remaining rows, which currently, which we don't know what the number is. So we need to create this now again. And then we are going to execute our statement again with the remaining rows inside our chunks array. All right, so yeah, again, the big difference here is that we are creating a prepared statement for multiple values that we want to add. At the beginning, we do this for the chunk size, which currently is 500. Then again, we're streaming over the file. We are creating the chunks here by merging the array with the current values. And then we need to check the chunk size again in order to, if we have already reached our size here, then we can execute the chunks. But still at the end, we need to make sure if we have remaining chunks here, which we have to create a new prepared statement for, because this is now a count of items which we don't know yet, which we first have to calculate here. Okay, let's give this a try. All right, 100 customers, 23 milliseconds. Very good so far. 1K, 39 milliseconds, 2 queries. Okay, it's looking good already. 10K, 250 milliseconds for importing 10,000 customers inside our database with 20 queries. Again, memory is no issue here at all with this approach. Okay, 10K, I think that's already what we did. 100K, let's see, this should be now a couple of seconds. Yeah, almost only 2 seconds to import 100,000 of customers. So this means I'm super excited about this now. 1 million customers with our new approach here. And voila, 20 seconds for importing 1 million rows into our database, which when you think about is already mind-blowing. The best approach which we had before was 3 or almost 4 minutes, which also wasn't too bad because 1 million records is a lot. But this now works really, really fast, only 20 seconds. And it's using 2,000 queries to do this. And yeah, almost no memory at all, which is just crazy how good this now works. So this is already an approach which you can do a lot with, but there's some other things that I also want to show you. All right, so this next approach will be about a new feature that Laravel introduced last year at Laracon US, which is called Concurrency. So in Laravel, we have this Concurrency facade here, this one here, and we can run some tasks here at the same time. And the tasks would be an array of closures. And then those closures would run at the same time. And when you think about this actually could also be helpful while importing a lot of data. So let's give this a try and see where this gets us. Next to the tasks, I also need to define the number of processes. So on my machine, I have 10, so that's why I'm using 10 here. All right, and now we need to create 10 different closures, which we're going to add here. And we're going to do this with a for loop. And I is 0 at the beginning. We need to run it 10 times for all of our processes. And then we increase I. All right. And now for every iteration here, we need to create a new closure, which we're going to add to our tasks array. And for this closure, we're going to need some values here. We need the file path, $I, number of processes, and the time. Okay, good. So what is next here? First, inside here, I want to make sure that we're going to reconnect to the database. I'm not sure, but I think this could be an issue if we don't do this for those different closures here, so that there would be interference between those processes. And then we're going to do the stuff which we've done before. We're going to open the file, open our file path. We only need to read this, yes. And then we're going to skip the first line. And this is interesting here. We have two different methods to get the current line of the file we are looking at. We have fget and fget.csv, which we have already used. Fget just gives us back the raw string of the current line in the file. And fget.csv gives us back an array with the values already formatted, which we mostly need because we need it as an array to work with it. But sometimes we're not sure if we really need this data formatted, because at some point we want to skip the header, for example. Then it makes sense to just use fget because, yeah, we don't need this formatted header because we just need to get this line out of our way. And also later you will see we're not sure for every process which line we're going to take into this process, and there this also makes a huge difference. Then we also need to keep track of the current line. We're starting here at 0. And we need track of our customer data, which here at the beginning is an empty array, customer data, yeah. Okay, next we need to loop over our file again. So the line we get again here with fgets, because at this point we still don't know if we're going to need this current line. And if this is not false, we're going to process it. And here comes now a very important step. At this point, we need to make sure that we dedicate specific lines to specific processes. So it's kind of we're separating the file and put like a bunch of rows to the first process, a bunch of rows to the second one, to the third one, and so on. And there are different ways to do this, but I found a very nice and almost special one, which I want to show you. So we're going to check our current line, and we're using the modulo operator against the number of processes. And if this is not the same as I, we are going to continue. Let me tell you what this does in a second. So I think I'm going to show this to you visually. So here's an example for the first 20 lines, and we have 10 processes. So our process number 1 should get all the lines 0, 10, 20, 30, and so on. Process number 2 gets all the lines 1, 11, 21, and so on. And process number 2 gets 2, 12, and so on. And the way we're doing this is with the modulo operator. So we run the current line against our number of processes, and this will always give us a specific remaining value. So for the first process, the remaining value is 0. If the remaining value is 0, this line is be processed by process number 0 in this case. If the remaining value is 1, this will be processed by process number 1. And think of it like a card dealer when playing poker or something. You're just passing those cards, and each person gets specific cards, but one at a time. And this is exactly what we're doing here. So, and $I in this case is also the remaining value. And if it's not the same as the current loop iteration here, then we continue and we move on. And by the way, also nice trick, we can increment this here after the variable. So this means the value here is being used for this operation, for this check here, and afterwards it's being increased because we still have to increase this every time. And this is a nice little trick. So yeah, plus plus here at the end, it's being used after this evaluation with the module operator here. So I think this is a really nice trick and cool way to split out our file into different tasks here. Also good to know here, this also means we have to run this going through the whole file 10 times for every process, which when you think about it sounds pretty heavy and a big process, but you will see later it's actually still pretty fast. Okay, at this point now we know this line is something that we want to process here, so this is now where we're going to use the string get CSV method. So now we're getting the formatted one for this line. And now we need to add this to our customers data. A new array we're going to add here. And here I'm passing in. So this is called row, yes, customer data. All right, this looks good so far. Okay, and then at some point we have to check again if we have enough values inside our customer data. So we are chunking here again, that's the idea. Let's just define it here, 1000 per insert. And then since we're already going a little bit raw here by being very PHP load level code here, which we're going to use, we are also using the query and not the eloquent model method here in order to import this data. Table is called customers. And we're going to insert here our customer data. And afterwards, we're going to reset this to an empty array so that we can move on with the next iteration. All right, so then here, I think this is after the while loop here. Yeah, so after this, we still need to make sure that we get the remaining customer data, which were not imported yet after the while loop. So let's check if it's not empty our customer data array. Then again, we're just doing the same as before. We don't need to reset it because we are already at the end of this task here. And the only thing left here is to close the file. And I think that's it. And then we run the tasks. Okay, let's try to recap here. Let's go up here. So the idea is we're going to use all the 10 different processes of my machine here to run those different imports in different processes. So this means we are creating here 10 different closures here, which we're going to add to the tasks array, which we're going later add to the concurrency facade. And here we're opening the file, we're going through every line of the file, and we're making sure which are the lines which we want to process in this current process. Then this creating data is still the same. We're making an insert for every 1000 customers which we have. We make sure we don't forget the one. We're closing the file, and then we run this. Okay, let's see if we got this right. Okay, PHP artisan import customers. Let's try with 160 milliseconds, almost no memory. We don't see currently the query counter here because this is not working now that we're using concurrency. I need to check if I could fix this, but yeah, we still have 100 rows in the database, so we know it worked. And I can tell you it was just one query. All right, let's try with 1K, 187 milliseconds, 1000 rows. Okay, also seems to work. Also not too bad. We've seen faster approaches, but still good. What about 10K? So this is now interesting because we're still only using 238 milliseconds for this. Again, almost no memory, pretty cool. What about 100K? Wow, 666 milliseconds. So this is now where this approach gets really fast because the time isn't that much increasing from iteration to duration like we've seen in other approaches because, yeah, this happens now all at the same time. Okay, what about 1 million customers into our database? Oh, we got an exception. Concurrent process failed with execute 255. So yeah, this could be anything, but I'm pretty sure it's a memory issue. Let's take a look if we find the issue. Oh, right, we forgot to use our date variable. Yes, that's a really good example because we will try to create the date now for every record 2 times, which is super memory heavy. So this should be now way faster with using the one that we already created. So let's try again. 1 million customers. Fingers are crossed that it's working now. Please make it happen. Yes, here we go. 1 million users imported into our database in just 4 seconds, which is, yeah, crazy how this works with concurrency. But yeah, it seems concurrency is something where that could help us really well with such tasks here. I'm pretty sure there's still a lot of things that you have to consider if you don't want to update different items at the same time. So in our case, we're always working with a fresh database. So that's why this is not an issue for us at all. But yeah, I think this is a really nice approach, and it's super, super fast. And since we are so fast, let's also try something else now with this approach. What about 2 million customers? Is this now 2 times the amount of time which we had before? Let's check it out. Oh, is this even working? Yeah, 8 seconds, 2 million customers inside our database. Oh my God, this is really, really cool. But I'm not finished. There's one more approach. It's like the silver bullet for importing CSV file into MySQL database, which I want to show you. Okay, one more thing that I'd like to show you. All right, let's delete everything which we got here. So where do we start? So we want to use a feature of MySQL where we can use a local CSV file and import it directly into our MySQL database. It's super cool. Let me show you. And in order to do this, we need to use PDO again. So connection get PDO. All right, here's our object. And now we need to enable this. Going to set an attribute, and this is called PDO MySQL attribute local infile true. We need to enable this because by default this feature is not enabled. And we also need to adapt the file path. We're going to replace those slashes. I think this should be right. Yeah, because this is the format which we need for using it directly in SQL. And now we're going to write our query. All right, so we want to load data local infile. We provide our file path and into table customers. And by the way, if this sounds or looks like that I'm writing this off from somewhere else, I do, because this is not something that I could yet just write from the top of my head. So bear with me here. Fields terminated by a comma, enclosed by a double quote, lines terminated by a new line. And we want to ignore the first line, which is the header. And here we're going to provide now all those columns. We give them names here. And then we still have to set this. Let me paste this in here. So we need to set again all of our fields here with those specific columns. And for created and updated add, we're going to use a MySQL function to insert this. All right, and in the end, we're going to execute this. All right, this looking good so far. Actually, it's quite readable. I think this should already do the trick. Let's give this a try now. PHP adders and import customers. All right, we have an issue, syntax error. You have an error in your SQL syntax. Okay, let's see what we did wrong here. Yeah, here, country and birthday, we forgot the comma. So it seems like we have no syntax highlighting here for SQL. Let's try this again. Okay, this is a different issue. Loading local data in file is disabled. Yeah, so that's what I told you. By default, this feature is disabled. We already set it on the PDO side of things, but we also have to do this on the MySQL server. So let me enter my MySQL here. And I think this is what we need to do. Yeah, set global local in file to 1. I think this should be it. Let's just quit this here. Clear this out and let's try again. And I've got a typo. Of course, it wouldn't be a video if I wouldn't do a typo here. Created at. Okay, now please make this work. Yes, here we go. 100 customers, 30 milliseconds. Super fast. 1K, 43 milliseconds. Still under 100 milliseconds. This is really amazing. So 10K, 108 milliseconds. Wow, this is so fast. It's incredible. 100K, 500 milliseconds. Oh my God. Are you ready? 1 million customers in like just above 5 seconds for importing 1 million customers into the database, which is just crazy when you think about this. Of course, the result's a little bit similar to what we had with our concurrency approach, but you can't really compare this. This is now running in one process. Okay, let's also try 2 million customers now as well. It still blows my mind how fast this is. So I guess we should see now something around 10 seconds for 2 million rows. And yeah, here we go. 10 seconds for 2 million rows imported to your database, which is just so crazy how fast this is compared to all the other approaches that we had. Of course, with this approach, we also have to think about that this is something that is not enabled by default. For some reasons, we are loading this file path, which needs to sit local where your MySQL server lives. So this could be something that doesn't work for you, or there could be a security concern as well. So yeah, this is something to think about as well. And next to that, you also have to think about we're not doing yet validation, we're not doing updates, we are not dealing with different tables here. So these are all things that we're not doing here in this example and that you probably would need for your use case. But still, when you think about our use case and what we achieved here in this video now, this is really just amazing, and it just blows my mind how fast this is. Alright, this was a lot, but I had so much fun and I learned a ton while preparing this video. As I mentioned at the beginning, there are many solutions for such a task, and I just showed a few of them today. There are also great packages out there that can help you with large imports. I mentioned them in the video description. And yeah, in real life, you should also check out the queue and jobs, because this is something where large imports could really benefit from when you just split everything up into jobs and push it to the queue. But that's not something that I wanted to talk about today. So yeah, I'm looking forward to reading all your comments and tips and tricks about importing large data in the comments. Please, yeah, let me know what you like and what worked for you. And yeah, have fun importing a lot of data, and see you the next time. Bye. Let's import 1 million rows. Let's import 1 million rows to the database. Let's import 1 million rows to the database. Let's import 1 million rows. Let's import 1 million rows to the database. Let's import 1 million rows to the database.